Brant DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brant. Visit your local Brant dealer for more information.
Joining me now to have what's sure to be a very interesting conversation, and one we probably have not done enough of here at Real Agriculture. It's Jane Underhill with Jane Underhill Canadian Wool Agency. She is the founder and president. Welcome here, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Jane, when I mention as a sheep producer that I have sheep, everyone says, "Oh, for the wool?" To which I respond, "No, for the meat." But wool is amazing, and I wish we could do more with it. And you, Jane, are someone who is actually doing more with it. So give us, before we sort of delve into that market, give us a snapshot of what it is you do with your company in the wool industry here in Canada.
Oh, thank you for the question. So my company, JU Wool, is what I kind of how I describe it in a shorthand version, is an agency that responds to real world needs in wool, in Canadian wool. So we have 4 basic services. The first one is white label manufacturing. That's where we take wool and move it into the supply chain for customers who want blankets, upholstery, carpets at a commercial volume. We do research and development projects where we help innovators, government agencies, legislative bodies try and understand and work to grow the Canadian wool industry. We offer a brand new wholesale knitting yarn manufacturing segment. Recently, we have created a whole collection for retailers, artisans, designers who are starting out in the wool industry, who have who can't really meet the high minimum order quantities of our white label manufacturing and our private label manufacturing. This is an opportunity where we can consolidate orders from several small businesses to meet the commercial manufacturing MOQ, but it's done in a more reasonable scale. But I do wool marketing too. And most importantly, this is where we work with farms to improve the value of the wool at the farm gate. This doesn't involve changing how sheep are managed on farm. It involves looking at shearing and wool handling protocols, how the wool is sorted and packed, and that goes a long way to helping the wool coming into our value chain.
Now, you mentioned right off the hop, and I think this is a really important point, is that your business is focused on meeting a need that exists. And I think for many of us in the sheep industry, wool has almost become a 4-letter word in a bad way, in that we have a lot of, costs associated with shearing our sheep, maybe shipping that wool, and we haven't necessarily seen the value in it. And yet so many of us certainly feel like it is such an amazing product for what it can be used for, and you've highlighted some of those things. But there just hasn't necessarily been, and I get this a lot from people who are saying, well, why can't you just ship it to here? Why can't you just make it into yarn? And so I firsthand have experienced sort of this major gap in the market. So how does this come to be for your company? Do people come to you and say, I've got an idea, here's what I want to do with it? Or do companies come to you and say, I have a need for, a renewable fiber and I need to source it? Is it all of the above? How does it work?
Well, I'm really proud to say that we have partners across the value chain. So yes, we have producers coming to us. Yes, we have innovators coming to us. Yes, we have retailers, hotels, government procurement agencies that are looking to tell a different story in the products that they're making. And I happen to know that we have an exceptional quality of wool in Canada. And the rhetoric I think that we've been fed over the years that Canadian wool isn't worth anything is a myth. And I've written about this extensively. we have lost certain skills in preparing and handling that wool. We've lost a skill set of knowing how wool works, but that doesn't mean the wool in itself doesn't have value. And so there is as much a psychological obstacle to get over as there is just in making a few adjustments on farm. And then when we improve that wool quality coming into the supply chain, I have a wide array of paths that wool can go down to bring value back to the farm.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned yarn, obviously. I mean, when we think wool, we think wool sweaters, we think wool socks. But to me, wool was replaced by plastic, essentially, right? By nylons and different plastic fibers.
Correct.
And I think about wool, I think about upholstery, I think about anywhere we use plastics, really, in car parts, in carpets, in everywhere from I think very high end all the way to very utilitarian, incredibly tough, durable things. What right now is driving a lot of your business as far as the products that are being sought after to include wool?
Oh, that's such a good question. I believe that our wool is in the micron range and the quality is well designed for home interiors. So I like home interiors for a couple of reasons. One is we use up a lot of wool. We're able to move large volumes of wool off farms. We're able to move it into commercial processing. That requires a higher volume of wool, but the efficiency coming out of processing makes it a more affordable product. And it is what gives us the margin so that everybody in the value chain makes a bit of money. I guess, sometimes I guess we're afraid to use the term money, but it is about money. We're in business.
We need to be
We're
profitable.
in business.
Yes. And that's okay.
And look, the mini mill systems are great for the artisanal approach, for the one-off special project. But for me, the timelines and the cost, the price point, I need to use commercial. And I need to move a lot of wool off farms because I want to relieve that stress for our producers. And taking 200 pounds of wool off of a farm doesn't make a dent when your barn is full of wool bags. So I want to be able to move as much wool out as possible. This is why carpets, upholstery, bedding, I find wonderful. There are new innovations happening with industrial products that could be in the agriculture space, in the construction space, in the roadwork space. I like wool for those applications, but the price tolerance, typically we want to make really economical construction materials. That's not going to be Canadian wool. Mm-hmm. This is where I see a bit of a disconnect in the industrial space. There's still more R&D to do to see if we can produce industrial products using Canadian wool so that it's affordable for everyone. But certainly we can do luxury home goods where there's more price tolerance, more opportunity to sell, a wider audience for those products. We have a lot of versatility. We can make very interesting products using a customer's color palette, design, something that matches their value and their vision, and all with Canadian wool, which actually, when it is produced through proper commercial means, is an incredibly soft, luxurious fiber.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, some of the changes that a producer could make to ensure the value of that wool as the commodity, as the beginning point of a value system. We hear often, as producers, we might hear about breed selection, but also we hear about things like feeder setup and even just, how we skirt that wool, etc. How much of that conversation happens with the farmers that you're working with? How much have they had to change, or is it not a lot that they've had to change to ensure the quality of the wool going to some of these projects?
I would say that there is less change than a producer might believe. My philosophy is that we are not going to be changing how you raise your sheep. Whether the animals are raised indoors or outdoors, whether they're on accelerated lambing or an annual lambing, I trust our producers to know what's best for their flock. Where I step in is to say, when you're shearing, let's try and avoid second cuts. That's my responsibility to work with the shearing industry, especially new shearers coming into the market, to make sure they know how to shear for wool quality, not just for health and safety of the animal, but also improving their technique so that the fleece is coming off the animal in a proper pattern. And then we work bagging. I would say the biggest change I've asked producers to make is to use square tote bags rather than sausage bags for their wool. Already, we can pack those bags, those square totes, in a trailer much more efficiently. Right away, we're saving so much money just by that packing. And learning a bit of skirting, doing a more aggressive skirting, knowing what pieces to take off. Because ultimately, you can fill your bags with all the wool that's coming off your animal, but somebody else is going to have to skirt it off at scouring, and I'm going to have to pay for that service. So you can help me by skirting off the stuff that's not going to be premium fleece and keeping that separate. And there's a use for that less than premium wool. We can find a use for that. But it helps us so much just to put the right wool in the right bags.
Mm-hmm. Simple steps that make a big difference down the entire value chain.
It is unbelievable when I start breaking down the costs. You know, we've done some studies over the last couple of years that say, on average, it costs about $1.52 per pound to shear an animal. That doesn't include the feed to raise them, but that includes on shearing day, having a shearer, feeding them, having a hired hand to help with the skirting and sorting, right through to the sack, the wool tote, $1.52 a pound. So that puts a lot of pressure on me to be able to create efficiencies elsewhere in the supply chain, so I make sure that we can get you your $1.52 a pound and better.
Right.
It's going to be a work in progress when we bring new farmers on. There's an education. We can't be paying top dollar right out of the gate, but we'll get there quickly. And the more collaboration and belief that we have in the producer, the quicker that'll go.
All right. Jane Underhill, we could probably talk all day, but I am limited by this is only a 1 hour radio show. And so I want to send a shout out, juwool.com. That is
juwool.com. Yes.
That is your site. Everyone, go check it out if you've got questions for Jane, ideas, etc. And if perhaps you're someone who wants to be part of that value chain, you can always reach out. Jane, thank you so much for joining me here on Real Ag Radio. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.